The scent of lavender still clung to our bedroom, a phantom echo of the woman who'd once filled it with laughter and life. Now, it just smelled like betrayal. Sarah had always loved lavender. It was her signature. It was also, I realized, a mocking reminder of the lie our marriage had become. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Late nights at work, weekend, conferences, in other cities, a detached glaze in her eyes whenever I tried to connect. I'm not a fool, I saw the signs, but I chose to ignore them. I loved her, desperately, idiotically perhaps. I wanted to believe in the fairy tale we had built together, the one where we grew old holding hands and irritating each other with our silly habits. Then came the confirmation, the brutal, heart-shattering kind. A carelessly left phone unlocked, a string of messages filled with the nauseating pet names she used to call me, now redirected to another man. My gut twisted, my head swam, and the anger burned a hole straight through my chest. It wasn't just the affair itself. It was the way she had so casually discarded our life together, the vows we'd whispered, the dreams we had held so dear. But the worst part, the part that still made my jaw clench even months later, was the night of her annual, girls' gathering. It was a tradition, a group of her close college friends converging at our house for cocktails and gossip. They'd always been a little cliquey, I guess. I'd tolerated it, mostly, because Sarah loved them, and I loved her. That particular night, the air was thick with a smugness I hadn't noticed before. Laughter bounced off the walls, punctuated by knowing glances. I poured myself a drink, the bitter taste of whiskey mirroring the one rising in my throat. Sarah was the life of the party, her voice ringing out, high-pitched and confident, as she regaled her friends with stories. Stories that somehow always managed to include a dig at me. "Oh, Mark," she'd said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness, "he's so predictable. He always brings me flowers on our anniversary, so boring, right girls?" They all laughed, a chorus of high-pitched agreement. It was like watching a pack of hyenas circle a wounded animal. Each comment was a carefully placed barb, disguised as harmless banter. She mocked my cooking, my taste in music, even the way I slept. With each jab, I felt myself shrink a little more, the color draining from my face as my heart grew heavy with shame. But the worst of it was yet to come. "You know, sometimes I feel like I'm living with a houseplant," she'd giggled, gesturing to me with her wine glass. "He just sits there, watches TV. So passive." That was it. The dam broke. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a cold, calculating anger replacing the hot, reactive one. I was done being a punching bag. Done being the quiet, dependable husband she could so casually ridicule. I took a deep breath, my gaze sweeping over the faces of her friends, their eyes glinting with amusement. They were waiting for me to react, to shrink under their judgment. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. I excused myself, the words calm, even. I walked upstairs, the rhythmic click of my shoes echoing against the hardwood floor. Each step was measured, purposeful. I wasn't thinking about her anymore, not really. I was thinking about strategy. I opened my laptop and navigated to a private folder I'd created weeks before. A folder filled with screenshots and recordings. The fruits of my own private investigation. The messages, the pictures, the timeline. Everything was there, meticulously documented. I had initially gathered it out of desperation, hoping to salvage what we had. Now, it was my weapon. I copied everything onto a USB drive. Then, I grabbed a small projector I used for the occasional movie night. I walked back downstairs, into the lion's den. The noise quieted as I entered, all eyes on me, waiting. "What's that?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. A flicker of unease crossed her face, but she tried to mask it with a condescending smile. "It's a presentation," I said, my voice flat. I set the projector on the coffee table and pointed it at the blank wall. I pulled out my USB drive, plugged it in, and pressed play. Silence. A stunned, heavy silence fell over the room. The first message flashed on the wall, clear and crisp. "I can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Mark is so boring, he would never know the kind of passion I've found with you." Her friend, Melissa, gasped. Each message, each picture, each recording played out in excruciating detail, painting a stark picture of Sarah's betrayal. There were images of her with another man, a man I knew she worked with. There were voice notes, whispers filled with promises and lies. The room seemed to shrink as the truth unfolded, their laughter replaced by shocked gasps and muttered exclamations. Sarah's face was a mask of horror, her eyes wide with disbelief. She looked like she'd been punched in the gut. I watched as the color drained from her cheeks, the confident, mocking woman I had known only moments before slowly dissolving into a pathetic, cornered animal. Her friends looked equally stunned. The smiles had vanished, replaced with expressions of disbelief and disgust. They had been complicit in her mockery, in her cruelty. Now, they had front-row seats to her downfall. The energy in the room had shifted completely. They were no longer laughing. I didn't say a word, I didn't need to. The projection did all the talking. The evidence was undeniable, the betrayal irrefutable. The slideshow ended abruptly, leaving the room in stunned silence. Sarah burst into tears, sobbing uncontrollably, her face buried in her hands. Her friends, normally so quick to offer comfort, sat frozen, their faces etched with a mix of shame and awkwardness. No one moved to help her. No one knew what to say. I stood there, calm, almost detached. The anger had subsided, replaced by a quiet sense of vindication. I had faced my humiliation, and now, I had exposed hers. Finally, I spoke, my voice low and steady. I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of a dramatic fight. I'm not going to yell or scream. The evidence speaks for itself. I glanced at her friends, their expressions still shell-shocked. I think it's time you all went home. I walked out of the living room, leaving her to her tears and to her suddenly silent friends. I went upstairs, grabbed a bag, and started throwing my clothes into it. I didn't even look back. Later that night, I sat on the balcony of my new, temporary apartment, overlooking the city lights. The cool night air felt refreshing, like a balm to my wounded soul. I finally felt a sense of release, a lightness I hadn't experienced in months. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. I would have to navigate the divorce, the financial fallout, the emotional wreckage. But I would do it without the weight of her betrayal hanging over me. I had taken back my power, my dignity. I had found my voice. I had turned her ridicule into my strength. The lavender-scented house was behind me now, a painful memory. It was time to breathe fresh air.